So it's Friday the 10th of April, and it's the day that we would have been starting the photography and meditation retreat at Dharma. But sadly this year it's not to be. So for the first time in 20 years I won't be standing down by the shores of Loch Voil watching and photographing the sunrise and listening to the dawn chorus. So instead, I've come down to Loch Venica, which is about a 5 mile cycle ride from my house, and I'm going to share some photographic tips with you this morning. So tip number one is explore and photograph your own patch. So during the pandemic, of course, we don't really have much choice because we have to stay at home, go out once a day for exercise, but we can go out into our own patch. And actually, it's very good photographic advice anyway. For the past 6 months, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been almost exclusively photographing around here and around Dharma, and it's been fantastic. I've seen things I've never seen before in my local area, even though I've been living here now 8 years. So I know what you're thinking. It's all very well for him, you know. I don't have a picturesque loch I can go to. Yeah, I stay in a tower block in the middle of a city somewhere. Well, you still have a local patch, so there's no excuse really. Perhaps you've got a garden, or there's a local park, or there's a canal or a river, or there's that kind of bit of waste ground next to a car park or next to a supermarket. And all these can be surprisingly productive places to explore. So when you go into these areas, which you're probably quite familiar with, try and see them as if you're seeing them for the first time. See them with fresh eyes. And one practice that's really useful is just noticing, just simply noticing the details of what's there. So Andrew Gregg, in his book At the Loch of the Green Corrie, talks about the practicing of noticing that opens a crack into the centre of things. The practice of noticing that opens a crack into the centre of things. So I find that a wonderfully evocative take on the practice of mindfulness. Yeah? So this is something that we can do in our own patches, is to really notice the details. And I can almost guarantee you that you'll see things you've never seen before. You'll notice things that you've just passed over before. And of course this happens because most of the time we're lost in our heads. We're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future, we're not there noticing what's in front of our eyes. So practice noticing the details. Also engage your other senses, listening, yeah, touching, to bring you into a greater intimacy with what's in front of you. So I don't know if you can hear that. That's some swans taking off on the other side of the loch. Many of you will be living in urban environments, and there's a whole wealth of subjects in urban environments in your own patch. I mean, there's old buildings, there's kind of office blocks with shiny reflective glass, things like skips. Yeah, now skips are something we might just walk past without a second glance, but actually skips can be fascinating. Lots of rust, yeah, lots of lovely rust, peeling paint, lots of lovely textures, shapes, colours. Uh, so yeah, have a good look around a skip. Yeah, a surprisingly good photographic subject. So something you might want to think about, urban environments, also works well in landscape as well, is to maybe try out a bit of black and white photography. Now, most cameras and phones these days have a black and white setting, and black and white photography creates, well, the images create a mood and atmosphere all of their own, yeah, and certainly something that's well worth exploring. So this time of year, you get lots of geese beginning to get restless and heading north again. So it's a squad of about 100. I think squad's quite the right word, is it? Flock of about 100 geese just flying overhead just now. I don't know if you can hear them. And there's a chiff-chaff. I don't know if you can hear that. It's usually the first of the summer migrants, the summer warblers arriving. But there's one been singing here all morning on and off. So one thing that landscape photographers often go on about is photographing around the golden hours, which is the hours around sunset and sunrise. And they go on about this because the quality of light when the sun's low in the sky, it can be particularly special. It's softer, it's warmer, it gives things a bit of a glow, and also it brings out the textures. It kind of brings out the modelling in the landscape. So both in the city and in the countryside, these hours can be particularly rich for photography. So if you can get yourself out of bed in the morning, then the golden hour around sunset, fantastic time to be up and around. And if you're not so much a morning person, then there's always the sunset, the hours around sunset time. So moving on to tip number 2, which is take your time. Yeah. So just a quote from William Davis, the Welsh poet, from his poem Leisure. Oh, what is this life? If full of care, we have no time to stand and stare, no time to see beneath. Blah blah. I need to look this one up. Oh, what is this life? If full of care, we have no time to stand and stare, no time to see in broad daylight, streams full of stars like skies at night. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. Most of us need to slow down. Generally, we're on the go all the time. We're busy, lots to do, and we just tend to live our life at a fast pace. But our photography will really benefit if we practice taking our time and slowing down. So when I go out photographing, I usually like to allow a bit of time to settle in, to do this. So for example, I was here three days ago. I came here for several hours for the first time, and I just got to know the place. At first I didn't take any photographs, so I wandered around and practicing what I've been talking about, noticing the details. Initially it just seemed like a pleasant little outcrop into the lochside, but looking around, there's a lot to see around here and lots to experience. So I took almost an hour just doing this, exploring, and when I'd done that, I just sat quietly and had a couple of cups of tea out my flask, again just settling in, allowing myself to slow down and soak up the atmosphere of the place, the vibe of the place. And then only then did I start photographing. I was able to get into a flow of photographing because I'd taken in the scene. I kind of already had a sense of what I was drawn to, of what I wanted to photograph here. So for me, photography takes on a spiritual dimension if I do this. And it has the feeling of immersing yourself in the landscape. And in the immersing in the landscape, you just become more intimate with it. You feel into the landscape. You get a felt sense of the landscape around you, and then the photography then just flows out of that. Activity. So on photography meditation retreats, we often quote the American photographer Minor White, and he has some great advice for people going out photographing in the landscape. So I'll just read or paraphrase what he says. Venture into the landscape without expectation. Let your subject find you. When you approach it, you will feel a sense of resonance, a sense of recognition. Sit with your subject. Don't hurry. Let your intuition guide you when to photograph. Continue photographing until you feel the process is complete. When you've finished, bow to your subject, then move on. So venturing into the landscape without expectation. This is just going with an open mind, just curious, seeing what's there and seeing what speaks to you, what draws you, looking for that, open to that sense of resonance, where you start to connect with something in front of you, and that then forms the basis for the photography. So tip number 3 is coming back to the same place again and again. You can't get to know a place in one visit. This is the 4th time that I've been here, and each time I've noticed something different about it. Also, it's been in different weather conditions. So this morning it was cloudy, now the sun's eventually coming up. Other days I was here it was windy, so there was lots of waves on the loch, lots of sound of water lapping on the shore, of the wind in the trees. Or like today, it's pretty still, mirror still on the loch, and lots of bird song. Yeah. So it's different each time we come. And also we see something different when we come again, particularly if we practice conscious noticing. Yeah? Letting go of the past, letting go of the future, bringing our attention into the present, being curious, what draws us, yeah? And we'll see something different, or we'll see something we've seen before, but we'll see it with new eyes. And this is what Nan Shepherd talks about in a great book, The Living Mountain, which is written out of years of intimacy with the Cairngorms Mountains, of her spending time in the Cairngorms. So I'll just read a little section from that, from the last chapter of the book. I add to my experience each time I go to the mountain. The eye sees what it didn't see before, or sees in a new way what it had already seen. So the ear, the other senses. Knowing another is endless. The thing to be known grows with the knowing. Knowing another is endless. The thing to be known grows with the knowing. And this is what we get when we revisit. Yeah, we have a sense of a growing intimacy. And in traditional cultures, they sometimes talk about the spirit of place, and I think we can get a sense of the spirit of our own place when we repeatedly revisit it. Yeah? We just get a more and more rounded picture, a deeper connection with the place the more we return to it. So that's all I want to say this morning. The sun's finally come out and shining on the scene behind me. So just one more tip, and that's come and join us on retreat next year. So our photography retreats at the same time every spring, and come and join me on the shores of Loch Voil, watching the sun rise, hopefully through some magical spring mists. And if sunrises aren't your thing, then at Dharma we do have plenty of great rust to photograph, lots of peeling paint. Yeah, so yeah, be great to see you. So to finish off, I'm just going to show you some images that people have taken on photography retreats over the past few years here at Dharma. So that's all for me from now. Look after yourselves, take care, and hopefully see you sometime in the future. Bye. What I forgot to mention there was the reason we're ending the video with a slideshow is this is what we do in introductory photography retreats. We always end the retreat with a slideshow of some of people's photographs. So in the grand tradition of photography retreats, here is a selection of some people's works from the last couple of years. Enjoy.